The night sky over Earth was calm and beautiful. Stars shined like silver dust, scattered across the dark sea of space. But in one corner of that calm sky, something was falling. A small ship, burning bright like a comet. It was not a human ship. It came from far, far away. Inside the ship, chaos ruled. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. The air smelled like smoke and metal. An alien mother named Sarah held her small daughter Lyra close to her chest. Sarah's skin shimmered faintly blue under the emergency lights. Her eyes, wide and glowing, showed fear. Not for herself, but for her child. "Hold on, my little star," she whispered in her own language, a soft musical sound. The ship shook violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Fire surrounded the small vessel. The metal walls melted in places. Warning symbols flashed everywhere, but Sarah could not fix anything now. Her arm was bleeding a thick, glowing blue liquid. Her lifeblood. The wound burned, but she ignored it. All she cared about was Lyra. The little one cried softly, her small fingers clutching her mother's collar. The sound broke Sarah's heart. She tightened her grip, whispering, "It's going to be all right." But even she did not believe her own words. The ship hit the atmosphere harder. Everything turned bright, red, orange, gold. Then came a roar louder than thunder. Far below, deep inside a quiet forest, animals ran as a huge ball of fire tore through the clouds. Trees bent and broke. The ground shook like an earthquake. Birds screamed and flew away. The alien ship crashed into the earth, sliding across the ground and tearing through the forest floor. It finally stopped, half buried in dirt and smoke. The fire slowly faded, leaving silence behind. A silence too deep, too heavy. Then came a faint sound, a gasp. Inside the broken ship, Sarah opened her eyes. Everything hurt. Her body felt like it was made of stone. Sparks jumped from broken wires. The smell of burning filled the air. She tried to stand, but her leg gave way. Pain shot through her whole body. She gritted her teeth and crawled toward the sound of her daughter. But the seat where Lyra had been was empty. Sarah froze. Her heart stopped for a second. "Lyra?" she called weakly. There was no answer. Only the crackle of small fires and the sound of wind whistling through the broken hull. Fear filled her chest. She looked around, but the crash had thrown everything apart. The ship was almost torn in half. A small hole in the side showed the dark forest outside. The air was cold and strange. Earth's air. Sarah's breathing grew fast. She dragged herself out through the hole, leaving a faint trail of glowing blue blood on the ground. The forest was silent except for the soft hum of night insects. She stood under the tall trees, her body shaking. The stars above looked different, smaller, colder. She was on a strange planet, and her child was gone. "Lyra," she shouted again, her voice echoing through the forest. But only the wind answered. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Then, something moved. A branch cracked. Sarah turned quickly, her eyes glowing brighter, her hands raised. Her species was not defenseless. Even weak, she could defend herself. She scanned the trees but saw nothing. Her instincts screamed danger. Her kind could feel when something watched them. And right now she felt eyes on her. She stumbled backward, pressing her back against the ship's broken hull. Her pulse raced. Maybe it was a wild animal. Or maybe humans? She didn't know what kind of life existed here, but her fear was not for herself. It was for her daughter, who was small, lost and alone in this strange world. Sarah limped through the trees, calling softly. Each step hurt. The glowing blood from her wounds left a faint blue trail behind her. In the dark forest, it looked like a line of tiny stars fallen to the ground. She reached a clearing where the moonlight fell through the branches. She looked up, and tears filled her glowing eyes. The moon was beautiful, but it was not her home. Her world was far away, broken, maybe gone forever. She fell to her knees, weak and desperate. "Lyra," she whispered again. The night grew colder. Mist rolled between the trees. Somewhere far away, a pair of human headlights appeared on a dirt road, a car stopping near the forest edge. Sarah didn't see it. She was too weak. Her vision blurred. Before she collapsed, she thought she heard something. A small, distant cry. A child's voice. Her heart jumped with new hope. It was faint, but it was her daughter's voice. She tried to stand again one last time, but her body gave up. The world around her turned black. The forest grew silent once more. The glowing trail of her blood shimmered softly under the moonlight. marking the beginning of something no one on Earth could ever imagine. The first meeting between humanity and a lost, dying mother from the stars. Morning came slowly over the forest. The golden light of dawn touched the broken trees and burned ground. Smoke still rose from the crash site, thin and silver against the soft sky. Birds were quiet. The air smelled of fire and metal, something that did not belong to Earth. Miles away, at a small research station, Dr. Emma Clark looked at strange readings on her tablet. She was a young scientist who worked for a small government space research team. Her eyes widened as the device beeped again and again. "Unidentified energy signal," she said softly. "And it's close," her team gathered around. They were supposed to study meteor impacts, but this was different. The energy waves were too strong, too organized. It wasn't a rock. It was something alive, or built by someone alive. Within an hour, Emma and her team drove through the forest road, the tires crunching on gravel and fallen leaves. Their equipment rattled in the back of the truck. The deeper they went, the quieter it got. Finally, the signal led them to the crash site. The ground was black and burned. Trees had fallen in a perfect circle like a giant hand had pushed them down. In the center was a twisted piece of metal, half buried in the dirt, glowing faintly blue. It didn't look like any plane or satellite they had seen before. Emma stepped out slowly. "What in the world?" she whispered. Her partner, David, scanned the area with his device. "Radiation levels low. Energy signature stable. It's not dangerous." He looked around nervously. "Whatever this thing is, it's not from here." They approached the wreck carefully. The metal felt smooth, almost alive. Strange markings glowed faintly across its surface, like writing, but not human. Inside, through a broken section, Emma saw something that made her heart skip. There was blood on the metal, but it wasn't red. It was glowing blue. She knelt beside it. The liquid was thick, shining softly even in daylight. It pulsed faintly like it had its own light. This isn't human," Emma whispered. "Someone or something was inside." David raised his flashlight. "You think it's still here?" Before Emma could answer, a sound came from the shadows. A faint, painful breath. They froze. "Did you hear that?" Emma whispered. The sound came again, weak, struggling. Emma turned slowly toward the dark corner of the wreck. Something moved. At first, she thought it was just a reflection. Then she saw it, a shape, crouched and trembling. It had skin that shimmered like metal dust and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. It was Sarah. The alien mother looked terrified, weak, and ready to fight. Her body was injured, her left arm bleeding, but her eyes burned with protective fire. When she saw the humans, she hissed a sound of warning. Emma lifted her hands. "It's okay," she said softly. "We're not here to hurt you." Of course, Sarah didn't understand the words. She pressed herself against the wall, her breathing fast. She didn't know what kind of creatures these were. Her translator device had been broken in the crash. All she could feel was fear, and a desperate need to protect her missing child. Emma slowly took off her gloves and placed them on the ground, showing her empty hands. "See? No weapons." She pointed to the blood on Sarah's arm, then to her own first aid kit. "Let me help." Sarah's glowing eyes followed her every move. The tone of Emma's voice was gentle, almost motherly. It reminded Sarah of home, of the voice she used when she comforted Lyra. Her muscles relaxed slightly, though she didn't lower her guard. Emma carefully opened the first aid box and pulled out a bandage. She moved closer inch by inch, her hands shaking a little. When she finally reached Sarah, the alien flinched but did not attack. Emma wrapped the bandage around her arm, whispering, "It's all right. You're safe now." For a moment, their eyes met. Two mothers from two different worlds looking at each other with the same emotion, fear mixed with hope. Then Sarah spoke, her voice soft and strange, full of echoes. "Lyra." Emma didn't understand, but the pain in the voice was clear. She pointed to her chest. "Emma?" Then she pointed at Sarah, asking her name. Sarah hesitated, then touched her heart. "Sarah," Emma smiled. "Sarah, okay, Sarah." The alien tilted her head, studying the human's face. The word sounded kind, safe. She whispered Emma's name once, trying to copy the sound. "Emma," David whispered from behind. "Emma, are you sure this is a good idea? We don't even know if it's dangerous." Emma looked at Sarah, weak, trembling, eyes full of sorrow. No, she said quietly. She's not dangerous. She's hurt. The forest around them was quiet again, but a strange energy hung in the air. Two species standing face to face for the first time. Neither knew what would happen next. But in that quiet morning light, something powerful was born. Trust. And far away, deep in the forest shadows, a small voice cried faintly for its mother. Lyra was still alive. The forest was silent again, but the silence now carried something new. Not fear, not danger, but uncertainty. Sarah sat against the broken metal of her ship, her body weak, her eyes half closed. The human Emma moved carefully around her, setting up strange tools and lights. Every sound, and every click, every beep, made Sarah's muscles tense. She did not understand these people. Their words were strange, short, and rough. Their faces were soft, but their eyes were sharp, full of curiosity. And yet one thing stood out: kindness. Emma's every move was slow, careful, respectful. When Emma handed her water, Sarah hesitated. She had never seen a cup made of plastic before, but the clear liquid inside shimmered softly. She sniffed it. Safe. She drank. Her throat burned, but she could breathe better. Emma smiled a little. Good, she said quietly. Sarah didn't understand the word, but the tone, gentle, warm, told her what it meant. For the first time, she didn't feel like prey. The barrier of words hours passed. The sun rose higher and the forest came alive again. Birds sang, insects buzzed, and smoke from the wreck faded slowly into the air. Emma's team worked around the crash site, taking readings. But she stayed close to Sarah. Something about the alien's eyes. Deep, glowing, full of grief, pulled at her heart. She tried again to communicate. She drew a small picture in the dirt with a stick, a circle for herself, another for Sarah, then a line between them. She pointed to her own chest. Emma. Then she pointed to the circle she had drawn. Emma. Sarah blinked, trying to understand. She touched her own chest weakly. Sarah, Emma smiled. Sarah, she repeated softly. The alien tilted her head, studying the human's lips. Ma, she whispered, copying the sound. Emma laughed softly, almost in disbelief. Yes, Emma, it was small, just a word. But for both of them, it was a beginning. Pictures and feelings. Emma picked up her tablet and opened a photo. A small picture of her holding her young son, smiling. She showed it to Sarah. Sarah looked carefully. The two humans in the image were close, their faces bright with happiness. She could feel what it meant, family. She pointed at the child in the picture, then placed her hand on her own heart. Lyra. Her voice cracked when she said it. Emma frowned. Lyra? She repeated softly. She could see the pain in the alien's eyes. A name, a word full of loss. Sarah pointed to the forest beyond the wreck. She drew a small figure in the dirt, tiny beside a larger one, and then crossed it out. Her hands trembled. Emma understood. Your child, she whispered. Sarah nodded slowly, tears shimmering like blue glass in her eyes. For a moment, Emma forgot that she was talking to an alien. In front of her was a mother, lost, afraid, desperate to find her child. The feeling was universal. It needed no translation. Emma took a deep breath. She pointed to herself, then to the forest. We'll find her, she said, even though she knew Sarah couldn't understand the words. But Sarah understood the tone. She looked into Emma's eyes, and for the first time since the crash, she felt a spark of hope. The human promise. Emma called her team together. There's a child out there, she said. Alive, we're going to find her. David looked unsure. Emma, we can't just... She stopped him. We're not soldiers. We're scientists. And she's a mother. If it were your kid out there, would you just walk away? No one answered. The silence was enough. They began preparing: thermal scanners, motion sensors, tracking drones. Sarah watched them work, amazed by their strange tools. She couldn't understand their technology, but she saw their purpose. They were searching for her child. When one of the humans started to lift a broken piece of her ship, she raised her hand quickly. No, she cried out. The word came out rough, strange, but strong. Everyone froze. Emma turned. You speak? Sarah shook her head. She pointed to the wreck, to a small panel glowing faintly under the dirt. She pressed a sequence of symbols and a faint image appeared, a holographic projection of Lyra, smiling before the crash. The humans gasped softly. Emma stared. "That's her. Your daughter," Sarah nodded. Her trembling hand touched the image as if trying to hold it. Then the light flickered and disappeared. Emma's throat tightened. "We'll find her," she whispered again. Sarah didn't understand the words, but this time she smiled faintly, the beginning of trust as the sun began to set. Sarah sat by a small campfire the humans had made. She watched them eat and talk softly among themselves. She didn't understand their language, but she could feel their energy. Calm, gentle, alive. Emma handed her a small piece of food. Sarah hesitated, then took it. The taste was strange, but warm. Emma looked at her and said again. Softly, "Good." Sarah repeated the sound. "Good." Her tongue stumbled over the word, but the humans smiled anyway. For the first time since she crashed on this strange blue world, Sarah felt something she thought she had lost forever. Trust. The humans were different, but maybe, just maybe, they could help her find her daughter. And far away under the cold light of the moon, little Lyra shivered alone in the darkness, her tiny voice calling softly into the night, hoping her mother could still hear her. Night fell again over the forest. The stars blinked faintly above, their light trembling through the mist. Somewhere far beyond those stars was Sarah's home, a world she might never see again. But tonight none of that mattered. Her daughter was still out there. Somewhere in this vast, cold forest, little Lyra was waiting for her. Sarah sat beside the campfire while Emma and her team checked their scanners. The alien mother's eyes reflected the orange flames glowing like liquid sapphire. Every time a branch snapped or a bird called, her head turned sharply. Hope and fear battled inside her heart. Emma knelt beside her, holding up a small screen. "This," she said slowly, pointing, "will help us find her." The screen showed a faint trail, small bursts of blue light scattered through the trees. Sarah stared, then recognized it immediately. Lyra's life support device left behind traces of her energy signature. Her chest tightened. She pointed to the trail, then to herself. "Lyra," Emma nodded. "Yes, we follow," they packed quickly. The forest was dark and quiet. The only sounds their soft footsteps and the hum of the scanning devices. Every few minutes the tracker beeped softly, guiding them closer. The lost child far from them, little Lyra sat inside a hollow tree. Her tiny hands glowed faintly blue in the dark. She had stopped crying hours ago. Her breathing was weak, but she was still alive. Around her, the forest seemed enormous. Strange sounds came from everywhere. Rustling leaves, distant animal calls, whispering wind. She clutched a small crystal from her mother's ship and whispered words in her own alien tongue. "Mother will find me," she said, voice trembling. "She will come." Her mother's voice replayed softly from the broken communicator on her wrist. A few seconds of static, then Sarah's word, "Stay strong, my star." Then silence. Lyra closed her eyes and tried to be brave. Tracks and shadows back at the search, Emma's team found a new trail. Small footprints, light but distinct, pressed into the wet soil. They didn't look human. "She's alive," Emma said, her voice shaking slightly. "We're close." Sarah crouched beside the tracks, touching the ground gently. She closed her eyes and whispered her daughter's name. The faint hum from her voice resonated with the glowing trail, a sign of connection only her species could feel. Then, from deeper in the woods, came the sound of engines. David froze. "Do you hear that?" Emma turned toward the noise, and sharp, mechanical. Headlights flickered between the trees. It wasn't their team. It was someone else. Moments later, they saw the figures, soldiers moving in formation. They wore dark uniforms and carried weapons that gleamed under the moonlight. One of them spoke into a radio. "We found the crash site earlier. Orders are clear. Secure any non-human entity. Shoot if necessary." Emma's heart dropped. "Oh no." She turned to Sarah. The alien mother stood still, her body trembling not with fear but rage. She could sense the danger. She grabbed Emma's arm and pointed to the forest path. "Lyra," she said. "Go." Emma understood instantly. They had to move, now. The chase they ran quietly through the trees. Every branch seemed to whisper behind them. The soldiers' flashlights cut through the darkness, sweeping across the ground. Emma held the tracker close to her chest, following the glowing dots that led them deeper into the forest. Sarah followed close, limping but determined. Every step left a faint blueprint behind her, a glowing trail that could give them away. Suddenly, a beam of light flashed across the trees. "There!" a soldier shouted. Gunfire cracked through the forest. Bark exploded from the trees. Emma ducked behind a fallen log, dragging Sarah with her. "Stop shooting!" Emma yelled, though they couldn't hear her over the chaos. Sarah's breathing was fast. Her protective instincts took over. She raised her hand. The air shimmered with a soft pulse of blue energy, deflecting the next shot. The humans had never seen anything like it. David stared, whispering, "She's shielding us." The soldiers paused, confused by the sudden wave of light. Emma used the chance to move. "This way!" she shouted, pointing toward a narrow path leading down a small hill. They stumbled down the slope, branches slapping their faces, mud soaking their shoes. The sound of engines faded behind them. For a moment, only silence remained. The beacon at the bottom of the hill, the tracker beeped rapidly. Emma checked the screen. The signal was strong. Very strong. She looked ahead and froze. In the clearing ahead, under the silver light of the moon, sat a small figure curled up beside a fallen tree. Her tiny body shimmered faintly blue. Sarah gasped. "Lyra!" She ran forward, almost falling as she reached her daughter. The little one looked up, eyes wide, and for the first time in hours they met. "Mother!" Lyra cried, her small voice breaking with joy. Sarah pulled her into her arms, holding her tight. Tears streamed down her face, glowing softly in the night. She whispered over and over, "My star, my heart, I found you." Emma watched quietly, her own eyes wet. Even in the cold night, the scene felt warm, like the universe itself had paused to breathe. But the peace lasted only seconds. In the distance, the soldiers were coming again. Louder this time, closer. The humans and aliens were no longer just rescuers and refugees. They were now fugitives, united not by species but by survival. Emma turned to her team. "We move now," she said. "No more running alone. We protect them both." The hunt was over. The war for trust had begun. The night was no longer quiet. The forest echoed with footsteps, shouts, and the cold click of weapons being loaded. Searchlights cut through the trees like white blades. The soldiers were closing in fast. Emma could feel the vibration of boots in the ground. "We don't have time," she whispered. Sarah held her daughter close. Lyra's small hands trembled against her mother's neck. The alien child's glow pulsed weakly. Fear made her light flicker. Emma knelt beside them. "We have to move," she said softly, though Sarah didn't understand the words. Still, the tone was enough. Sarah nodded. David checked the scanner. "They're spreading out. 3 groups. They'll find us in minutes. We'll go north," Emma decided. "To the river. The signal will mess with their trackers there." They started running again. Quiet, careful, hearts pounding. The edge of fear. The forest floor was wet and slippery. Branches tore at their clothes. Every breath burned. Lyra whimpered softly, her voice barely a whisper. Sarah stopped for a moment, wrapping her cloak around the child, whispering in her native tongue. A lullaby, gentle and sad. Emma watched her for a second, her chest tight. That sound, even though she couldn't understand it, was full of love. Then a harsh voice cut through the forest. "Freeze!" A spotlight snapped on. Soldiers appeared from behind the trees, guns raised. Emma froze. David raised his hand slowly. "Don't shoot." Sarah instinctively stepped in front of her daughter, her eyes glowing brighter, her wounded arm trembling. The soldier's voice was sharp. "Step away from the creature." Emma's anger flared. "She's not a creature, she's a mother." The man hesitated, confused. "Orders are orders, ma'am. We secure all unknown entities." "She's injured," Emma said. "She's unarmed."
"She's protecting her child, not attacking us."
Sarah looked between them, not understanding the words but feeling the danger. Her instincts screamed to protect Lyra. The air around her began to shimmer faintly with energy, a defense field forming, glowing blue in the dark. The soldiers flinched. Fingers tightened on triggers. "Don't," Emma shouted, stepping between them. "If you fire, you'll kill a mother and her child." A stand between worlds, the soldiers hesitated. One lowered his weapon slightly. Another whispered, "She's bleeding, sir." "She's scared," the captain glared. "Scared or not, we have orders." He raised his gun again. Sarah's eyes narrowed. She didn't want to hurt anyone, but her body was ready to shield her daughter at any cost. The blue energy field pulsed brighter. Leaves trembled. The air hummed. Emma took a step forward and spread her arms. "If you want to shoot her," she said quietly, "you'll have to shoot me first." The forest fell silent. Only the distant hum of the shipwreck could be heard. The captain's jaw tightened. "Dr. Clark, you're interfering with military operation." "No," Emma said. "I'm protecting life. That's what my job is. What yours should be too." Her voice didn't shake. She was terrified, but she stood firm. A single human standing between fear and compassion. Sarah didn't understand the words, but she understood the act. Slowly, the glow around her began to fade. Her breathing steadied. She trusted Emma, completely now. Lyra peeked out from her mother's arms, her big blue eyes watching the humans. She reached out a tiny hand, trembling, and toward the nearest soldier. The soldier stared at the child, then at his weapon. His hand began to lower. "She's just a kid," he murmured. For the first time that night, humanity looked at the aliens not as invaders, but as people. The choice. The captain hesitated. His order screamed one thing, but his heart whispered another. He looked at Emma, a scientist risking her life for a being she'd met only hours ago. He looked at the alien child, so small and fragile. Then he sighed. "Stand down," he ordered quietly. The soldiers froze, surprised. "Sir?" I said, "stand down." His voice rose, not in anger, but in decision. "No one fires. No one moves. We're not murderers." Emma's shoulders dropped in relief. Sarah watched carefully as the soldiers slowly lowered their weapons. The air became calm again. She looked at Emma and then did something unexpected. She reached out her hand. Emma took it. The alien skin was cool, faintly smooth, but the touch was warm. Alive, real. Two different worlds, two different beings joined by one shared truth, the desire to protect what they love. Lyra looked up and smiled for the first time. The faint light from her skin glowed brighter, bathing the forest in soft blue light. A fragile peace. For a few seconds, everything was still. The soldiers stared at the mother and child glowing softly in the night. The scene was almost beautiful, alien light and human faces mixing under the trees. Then David broke the silence. "We need to get them out of here before command sends more units." Emma nodded. "There's an old lab 2 miles from here. No one uses it anymore. We can hide there, treat her injuries." The captain hesitated, then finally said, "Go, before I change my mind." Emma looked at him, eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," he didn't answer. He simply turned away, muttering, "Maybe it's time we act human." Sarah didn't understand the words, but she understood the feeling. She bowed her head slightly in respect. And so, under the watch of silent trees, the humans and aliens disappeared into the darkness together. Fugitives from fear, bound by hope. The confrontation was over. But the bond between their worlds had only just begun. The forest had gone quiet again. The gunfire was far behind now, lost in the night. Only the sound of footsteps and breathing filled the cold air. The small group, Emma, David, 2 soldiers, and the alien mother and child, moved through the trees, guided by moonlight. Lyra clung to her mother's shoulder, her small eyes half closed from exhaustion. Sarah's limp was worse, but she didn't stop. Every step was for her daughter. Emma kept glancing back, making sure no one was following. "We're close," she whispered. Just a little farther. They reached an old concrete building hidden under vines and moss, a forgotten research outpost from decades ago. Broken windows, rusted doors, but still standing. Perfect for hiding. David forced open the metal door. It creaked loudly, echoing through the forest. The sound made everyone freeze, then silence again. Inside, the air was thick with dust. Old screens and wires hung from the ceiling. Emma found a dusty generator in the corner and flipped a switch. The lights flickered to life one by one, casting a weak orange glow over the room. It wasn't much, but it was safety. For now, the healing light. Sarah sat on an old table, her body shaking from pain. Lyra held her hand tightly, refusing to let go. Emma opened a first aid kit and began cleaning Sarah's wounds. The alien's blue blood shimmered softly under the light, almost beautiful despite the pain. "Her body heals fast," David said, studying the readings on a small scanner. "Cells are regenerating." "Incredible." Emma nodded, focused. "Let's not treat her like a test subject. She's a mother, not an experiment." Sarah watched their faces carefully. She couldn't understand their words, but she could feel their tone, warm, kind, careful. For the first time since the crash, she felt safe. When Emma finished wrapping the bandage, Sarah placed her hand gently over Emma's. Her touch was light, but full of emotion. "Thank," she tried to say, struggling with the word she had learned earlier. "Thank you." Emma froze, surprised, then smiled softly. "You're welcome." The alien mother's voice was weak but full of gratitude. In that simple word, she said more than any language could. Lyra's curiosity. While Sarah rested, Lyra began to explore the old lab. Her little hands touched everything: buttons, glass jars, wires. Every new sound made her jump, then laugh softly. David watched, amazed. "She's just like any kid," he whispered. Emma smiled. "Curious, brave, and far too smart." Lyra found a cracked mirror and stared at her reflection. Her glowing eyes blinked, then she looked at Emma and giggled. A small musical sound that filled the room with warmth. Even the soldiers, silent until now, smiled a little. One of them said quietly, "You can't look at that kid and think she's a threat." Sarah opened her eyes and saw Lyra playing. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, the first real one since the crash. The shared world later, Emma showed Sarah a holographic map on her device, Earth's continents glowing softly. She pointed to the blue oceans, the green lands, and said slowly, "Home." Sarah watched carefully. Then she touched the screen, drawing a small circle in the empty part of space, and said, "Tiran." Emma realized it was the name of Sarah's home world. She whispered it back, "Tiran." Sarah's eyes brightened. She took a small crystal from her suit and placed it on the table. It projected a faint hologram, an image of her planet, floating cities, twin suns, rivers of light. Everyone in the room stared in silent awe. "That's beautiful," David said. Sarah pointed to the image, then to Emma and her team. "Peace," she said slowly, trying the human word. Emma nodded, her eyes wet. "Yes, peace." The human hardest night deepened. The group sat around a small heater. For the first time there was laughter, quiet, hesitant, but real. Lyra rested on her mother's lap, wrapped in a human blanket. Emma handed her a cup of warm milk. The little alien smelled it first, then took a sip. Her small face lit up. "Good," she said proudly. Everyone chuckled softly. Even Sarah let out a quiet laugh, though her eyes still carried sadness. Emma watched her carefully. "You'll be okay," she said softly. "We'll help you, I promise." Sarah didn't know the words, but she felt their meaning. She reached out and touched Emma's arm, a gesture of trust. For a long time, they sat in silence, a human scientist, a wounded alien mother, and a child from the stars. The world outside might still fear them, but inside that forgotten lab there was peace. A fragile dawn. When dawn came, soft light entered through the broken windows. Birds sang again outside. For the first time in days, Sarah woke without fear. She looked down at her sleeping daughter and smiled. Emma stood by the door watching the sunrise. "They'll come looking for us soon," she said to David. "But we'll protect them. Somehow." David nodded. "You think they'll ever trust us?" Emma looked back at Sarah, who was watching her too, eyes full of gratitude. "Maybe," she said. "One day they might even call us friends." The light grew brighter, painting the room gold. Sarah stood weakly and whispered one word she had practiced all night. "Home." Emma smiled. "Not yet," she said softly. "But soon." And in that quiet dawn, two worlds, human and alien, shared the same fragile hope. That kindness could build a bridge where fear once stood. Morning sunlight touched the forest, warm and golden. Birds flew over the treetops, and the air smelled of wet leaves and new life. Inside the old lab, quiet footsteps echoed. Machines hummed softly. The world outside didn't know what had happened here. A mother and child from another world had found safety among humans. Sarah stood by the broken window, looking at the rising sun. The golden light reflected in her blue eyes. Her wounds had mostly healed now. Her breathing was steady again. Beside her, Lyra was laughing, playing with a metal cup, making soft ringing sounds that bounced off the walls. Emma watched them with a small smile. She had spent the whole night checking the readings, helping repair a few small devices from the wreck. Her eyes were tired, but her heart felt full. "Looks like she's feeling better," she said softly. Sarah turned and nodded. Her English still broken, but gentle. Lyra happy. Safe. Emma smiled wider. "She is. Thanks to you." Sarah shook her head slowly. "Thanks. To you." She pointed at Emma, then at her heart. "Good human." Emma laughed lightly, embarrassed. "I'll take that as a compliment." The message from the stars later that morning, the soldier's radio crackled. A transmission had come through. Not human. David adjusted the antenna, frowning. "It's some kind of coded signal. It's coming from orbit." Sarah's head snapped up. She stepped forward quickly, listening. Her eyes widened. She recognized it instantly. The sound of home. "Ship," she said breathlessly. "My people." The soldiers exchanged glances. "Her people?" one murmured. Emma looked at Sarah. "You mean they found you?" Sarah nodded. "Yes. They search me. Lyra." Her voice trembled with emotion, a mix of joy and sorrow. She had dreamed of this moment since the crash, yet now she looked uncertain. Lyra ran to her side, holding her hand. The little one could sense her mother's feelings. "Home?" she asked softly. Sarah knelt and touched her daughter's face. "Yes. Home." But her eyes turned to Emma. The word home no longer felt simple. Somewhere in her heart, a part of Earth had become home too. The farewell decision. Outside, the morning fog lifted. The distant hum of engines grew louder, not military, not human. Above the trees, a silver shape shimmered through the clouds, an alien ship, sleek and glowing like liquid light. The soldiers stared in awe. "That's not ours." Emma's voice was quiet. "It's hers." The ship hovered above the clearing, silent, powerful, peaceful. A beam of soft blue light touched the ground, forming a glowing circle. Sarah stepped closer, holding Lyra's hand tightly. She turned back toward Emma. For a moment she didn't speak. She just looked, memorizing the human faces that had saved her life. Finally, she said, slowly but clearly, "You protect us. You good hearts." Emma swallowed hard. "You don't have to go," she said softly. "You could stay, learn. We could help you." Sarah smiled sadly. "Home calls must go, but—" She paused, searching for words. "Never forget." Lyra looked up at Emma and smiled brightly. "Emma, friend." That broke Emma's composure. She laughed through tears. "Yes, Lyra. Always your friend." The gift of hope before stepping into the light, Sarah reached into her cloak and pulled out a small crystal, the same glowing stone from her ship. She placed it gently into Emma's hand. "Memory," she said. "Our light. You keep." The crystal glowed faintly, like it carried a heartbeat. Inside it shimmered an image of Sarah's world, Tir-An, floating under two suns. Emma held it carefully, speechless. "It's beautiful." Sarah nodded. "Now, your world know. We come in peace." Then she took her daughter's hand and stepped into the blue circle. The light grew brighter, wrapping around them both like a soft blanket. Emma and the others shielded their eyes. When the light faded, Sarah and Lyra were gone. The ship rose silently into the clouds, leaving a single trail of silver dust that sparkled in the morning sun. For a long moment, no one spoke. The forest seemed to hold its breath. David finally whispered, "Do you think we'll see them again?" Emma looked up at the sky, still holding the glowing crystal. "I hope so," she said, "because if they ever come back, they'll know they have friends here." A new dawn for humanity days. Later, Emma returned to the crash site. The ground had begun to heal, green shoots pushing through the burned soil. Life was returning. She held the crystal up to the sunlight. The glow inside it pulsed gently, as if answering her heartbeat. The world would never know the full story. Not yet. But Emma knew the truth. Humanity had been tested, and this time it had chosen compassion over fear. She smiled softly. "Goodbye, Sarah," she whispered. "Goodbye, little Lyra." The wind moved through the trees, carrying a faint sound, a soft hum, like a distant song. It was almost like the stars were answering her. And as she walked away, the camera of her body cam caught one final frame, the burned wreckage faintly glowing as if some part of it still lived. A small light blinked once, then faded. Not the end, just the beginning of something far greater, the story of two worlds, forever connected by kindness.